take a look at this incredible organ right here, the human heart. This fist-sized powerhouse pumps blood throughout your entire body, delivering oxygen and nutrients to trillions of cells. And it never truly gets a break. So what happens when this pump starts to fail and can't keep up with the demands of your body? Well, that's heart failure, a condition affecting millions of people worldwide. And it's not as straightforward as it may seem, because it's not just like the heart suddenly stops with heart failure, but rather it weakens over time, leading to some serious backups and complications. So today, we're going to break down exactly what heart failure is, its primary causes, the symptoms it produces, and how it's treated, and how sometimes it might require a heart transplant. It's going to be a ventricular one. So let's get into some anatomical awesomeness and the pathological rudeness of heart failure. So let's start with the definition of heart failure. Heart failure, sometimes referred to as congestive heart failure, is a condition in which the heart muscle can't pump enough blood to meet the body's needs for blood and oxygen. So again, it's not that the heart just suddenly stops. That's called cardiac arrest. But with heart failure, the heart is still pumping, it's just weaker and failing to pump enough blood. And so therefore, the tissues throughout the body will get less blood and oxygen. And it also leads to congestion, or a backup of blood flow, which we'll get into in just a minute. But in order for us to understand even more about heart failure and some of its major causes, we should go over some important anatomy and functions of the heart, and really look at what the right side of the heart is doing compared to the left side of the heart. Because you can actually have left-sided heart failure, right-sided heart failure, or both. So here we have a real human heart. And let's start with the right side of the heart. The right side of the heart is dealing with deoxygenated blood, or carbon dioxide-rich blood. The right atrium receives this deoxygenated blood from the entire body, and you can see I'm opening up this right atrium so you can see inside. That blood will then pass through a valve called the tricuspid valve and into the right ventricle, which you can see the probes in the right ventricle through this window that we've cut into. Now, valves can definitely be relevant to our heart failure story, so keep the valves in the back of your mind. But when valves are working properly, they let the blood pass through, and then the valve should close so that the blood doesn't go back from where it just came from. So they are one-way valves to ensure that blood is only flowing in one direction. And you have to take a look at how cool this tricuspid valve is on this other heart dissection. You've got these awesome little strings, or these little heartstrings, called Chordae Tendineae, attached to the papillary muscle on one end and attached to the actual cusp of the valve that you can see I'm lifting up on the other. And once the blood passes from the right atrium through that tricuspid valve and into the right ventricle, that right ventricle will contract. And then if the tricuspid valve is working properly, it should close to stop blood from going back into the right atrium so that blood leaves through its proper exit, which is right here through the pulmonary valve and the pulmonary trunk. But let me show you some of the cool anatomy here. You can see these little cusps or leaflets of the pulmonary valves within the pulmonary trunk that we've opened up for you. The pulmonary trunk then branches into right and left pulmonary arteries, and that deoxygenated blood will be taken to the right and left lungs. We then breathe out the carbon dioxide, breathe in the oxygen, and then the blood within the pulmonary capillaries will be oxygenated. So just a quick checkpoint. Essentially, the main job of the right side of the heart is to gather the deoxygenated blood returning from the tissues, deliver it to the lungs so that we can get rid of the carbon dioxide and re-oxygenate the blood. And now, that oxygenated blood will go back to the left side of the heart, specifically to the left atrium, which you can see I'm opening up right here if that camera will focus for you. That blood will then pass through the bicuspid valve, also known as the mitral valve, and into the left ventricle. The left ventricle will contract, and again, if that bicuspid valve is working properly, it will close off so that the blood can leave through its proper exit, which is through, you can see my probe going through there, the aortic valve, which is within the aorta. The aorta is the size of a garden hose, and this artery essentially will start to branch and distribute blood to the entire body. And one other thing that I need to note before we apply all this information to heart failure is look at the difference in the myocardial thickness, or the thickness of the heart muscle, between the left ventricle that you can see right here and the right ventricle. The left ventricle is so much thicker because it has to pump blood to the entire body, whereas the right ventricle only has to pump blood right next door to the lungs. So how can this help us make sense of what is going on with heart failure? Well, in general, heart failure is usually caused by damage to the heart muscle itself, and or the heart essentially wears out due to long-term increased demand. Or in other words, the heart gets overworked for an extended period of time. Now, the number one cause of heart failure is a myocardial infarction or a heart attack, which is when plaque found in the coronary arteries ruptures and forms a clot, and then the heart muscle downstream from the clot doesn't get enough blood. If blood flow is not restored quickly enough, some of the cardiac muscle cells, which are also called cardiac muscle fibers, can die. And that's actually what infarction means, dead tissue due to a lack of blood flow. Now, the reason why this is so serious is that cardiac muscle fibers cannot be replaced. And let me take a second to explain what I often will explain to my pathology students. In a way, you can categorize the cells found throughout the human body into three categories: cells that are constantly dividing, cells that can divide when necessary, and cells that do not divide. Cells that are constantly dividing would include epithelial cells that make up your skin or blood cells that are constantly being replaced. Cells that can be forced to divide would be liver cells or kidney cells. You've likely heard that if someone donates part of their liver, that portion of the liver can grow back, and that would be from these liver cells almost being forced into cell division. You also see this if someone only has one kidney. That kidney will get larger in order to compensate for the increased demand. And it does this through cell division and cellular hypertrophy. But then there are the cells that do not divide. And these tend to include the most specialized cells throughout the body, such as neurons, as well as skeletal and cardiac muscle fibers. There are some instances where you can get some cellular regeneration of this category of cells, but it is extremely limited. And so you can start to apply this information to multiple conditions and see why brain injuries or spinal cord injuries that kill neurons are so detrimental. And coming back full circle to a heart attack, the most common cause of heart failure, if you kill those cardiac muscle fibers, you can't replace them. And instead, those dead muscle fibers get replaced with non-functional scar tissue, which means the heart's ability to pump the same amount of blood decreases. And it just so happens that most heart attacks affect the left side of the heart due to the nature and architecture of the branches of the left coronary artery. And so therefore, most heart attacks lead to left-sided heart failure, making it so the left ventricle, which we learned pumps blood to the whole body, has a decreased ability to pump blood to the body tissues. And blood can start to back up or pull upstream, which we'll address shortly. And there are levels to this, meaning you can have mild heart failure all the way up to severe heart failure. And unfortunately, mild heart failure often progresses, especially if no treatment is implemented, which we'll talk about treatment in a second. But the severity of heart failure is measured with something called the ejection fraction. The ejection fraction is basically the percentage of blood that the left ventricle pumps out with each heartbeat. And normally it's around 50 to 70%. But in heart failure, it often drops below 40%, signaling weaker pumping power. But before we get into the other causes of heart failure, let's talk a little bit about follicular failure and helping those hair follicles produce more long, luscious hair with the sponsor of today's video, iRestore. iRestore makes this incredible piece of technology called the iRestore Elite device. And this has been shown to be an effective at-home option for hair loss, with one clinical study showing a 43% increase in hair count within 4 months. The iRestore Elite is one of the most powerful hair devices on the market, with power output that is comparable to in-clinic treatments. It consists of 500 diodes, which includes 300 lasers and 200 LEDs. And because it uses both lasers and LEDs, you get more uniform and thorough treatment of the hair follicles compared to other low-level laser therapy devices. It is also FDA cleared and is a medication-free option to help with hair loss, and as I've mentioned, has been clinically shown to help support hair growth. It only needs to be used for 12 minutes a day, and the triple wavelength power ensures deeper and more effective treatment that can help enhance cellular metabolism in the scalp, improve blood flow, and reduce inflammation, which are factors that can contribute to hair growth. So if you're interested, visit the link on screen and use our coupon code IOHAHAIR to save $905 on the iRestore Elite device. We will also include that information in the description below. And now, let's get back to heart failure. Now, all of us have heard of high blood pressure or hypertension, and there are multiple reasons for wanting to keep your blood pressure down at normal levels. And one of those is heart failure, as hypertension is another major cause because it forces the heart to work harder to pump blood against a higher amount of pressure created by those stiffened arteries. And this is causing the heart to work harder 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And initially, the heart will try to adapt by getting stronger, and the myocardium of the left ventricle will get thicker. However, it can't keep up with this increased demand forever, and eventually the myocardium will dilate and become weaker, and again will lose its ability to pump enough blood to the body tissues. And as a side note, we have a more detailed video on blood pressure if you want to watch that afterwards. Another common cause of heart failure is damaged heart valves. Remember, we learned that the job of the heart valves is to keep blood flowing in one direction. And pretty much valve problems fall into one of two categories. Either the valve is too stiff or too narrow and won't open properly, and this is referred to as stenosis, or the valve leaks and therefore blood can leak back in the wrong direction, and this is referred to as regurgitation. So let's say the aortic valve is too stiff or too narrow and therefore won't open properly. This is referred to as aortic stenosis. This means that the left ventricle would have to pump with more force and therefore work harder just to get blood past that narrowed aortic valve and into the aorta. This would create a very similar effect as high blood pressure. Initially, the left ventricle will try to adapt by getting stronger, but over time it will eventually weaken. Or let's say we had aortic valve regurgitation. The valve is leaking. Now the left ventricle would pump blood through the valve and into the aorta, but because the valve leaks, some of that blood is going to come back into the left ventricle. And so in a way, the left ventricle pumps some of that blood in vain. Yes, that was a very nerdy cardiovascular joke. But the problem is that the blood from upstream, from the left atrium and the lungs, is not stopping. So now the heart doesn't just have to pump the blood that is still coming from upstream, it also has to pump the blood that leaked back in. And so this becomes this never-ending cycle that forces the left ventricle to keep pumping excess amounts of blood. And again, this will eventually weaken the heart and lead to heart failure. And as an FYI, aortic valve stenosis is the most common valve disorder that leads to heart failure, followed by mitral valve regurgitation. But you could apply this principle to any of the valves throughout the heart, including the valves on the right side of the heart, which brings us to right-sided heart failure. Now, a phrase that I often heard in training and that you'll often hear in medical discussions is that the most common cause of right-sided heart failure is left-sided heart failure. And this is where we can talk about the backup of blood that occurs with heart failure and why it used to be referred to as congestive heart failure. So let's say we have left-sided heart failure, meaning the left ventricle isn't pumping enough blood out to the body. Well, blood is still coming into the left side of the heart from the lungs. But since the left ventricle can't keep up, that blood starts to back up or pool upstream. And upstream from the left ventricle would be the left atrium, the pulmonary veins, and eventually the pulmonary capillaries within the lungs. And so now that blood is backing up into the lungs. This is going to increase the blood pressure within the capillaries of the lungs. And this is referred to as pulmonary hypertension. Now remember, the right ventricle's main job is to pump blood to the lungs. But now it's pumping against a higher pressure due to that pulmonary hypertension. And so the right ventricle has to work harder, and just like we talked about with the left ventricle, initially the right ventricle will try to adapt by getting thicker and stronger, but over time, it again cannot keep up. And the right ventricle will start to weaken and dilate, leading to right-sided heart failure. Now, there are other causes of right-sided heart failure, such as lung diseases like COPD, chronic thromboembolic disease, both of which can also cause pulmonary hypertension and overwork the right ventricle. Plus, you can have a heart attack that affects the right side of the heart. And you could have problems with the valves on the right, which include the tricuspid and pulmonary valves. But again, the most common cause of right-sided heart failure is left-sided heart failure. And this is where we can start to really understand the congestive part of heart failure. It's kind of like traffic congestion or a traffic jam, where something gets narrowed on the freeway and cars start to back up. Only in this case, it's a backup of blood. With right-sided heart failure, since the right ventricle is now weakened and can't pump enough blood to the lungs, blood will start to back up upstream from the right ventricle, which would be the right atrium, and then the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, which are the large veins that bring deoxygenated blood back to the heart from the body. And when blood backs up into these systemic veins, the pressure in those veins increases and fluid can start to leak out of the veins and into the surrounding tissues, leading to swelling or edema, often in the legs, ankles, and abdomens, or even the liver. So this congestion or backup of fluid is why it was called congestive heart failure, though now we just say heart failure with descriptions of whether it's left, right, or both. But now that we understand what is happening with heart failure, we can better understand the symptoms of heart failure, which we already gave you some, such as swelling in the legs, ankles, abdomen, and liver. But there are also some other symptoms that we should mention. Now, symptoms can sneak up slowly or hit suddenly, and they often worsen over time as the heart continues to struggle. One of the hallmark symptoms is shortness of breath. You might feel winded just walking upstairs or even lying flat in bed, because fluid is backing up in the lungs, making it harder to breathe, which is called dyspnea, and it can wake some people up in the middle of the night gasping for air. Fatigue and weakness are also quite common since your body is not getting enough oxygenated blood. And when it gets bad enough, everyday activities leave someone exhausted. One might also notice sudden weight gain from the fluid buildup, sometimes even a few pounds in just a few days. Other symptoms include a persistent cough or wheezing, sometimes with white or pink tinged phlegm from lung congestion. Some can get rapid or irregular heartbeats that feel like fluttering in the chest. Also, reduced appetite or nausea because blood flow to your digestive system is being compromised. Even confusion or impaired thinking can occur in severe cases due to low oxygen to the brain. And since those symptoms don't sound like much fun, how is heart failure managed? Well, with the right steps, many people can boost their quality of life and slow its progression. It starts with lifestyle changes such as a heart-healthy diet, low intake of salt to help cut fluid retention, and regular exercise like walking or supervised cardiac rehab to strengthen the heart safely. Weight loss may also be beneficial, as well as quitting smoking and limiting alcohol. Monitoring daily weight is also important because if someone were to gain 2 to 3 pounds just like overnight, it could mean worsening fluid buildup and they may need to address that. Medications are also very important. Diuretics like furosemide flush excess fluid, ACE inhibitors or ARBs relax vessels to help ease the load on the heart, and beta blockers can slow the heart rate and reduce strain. If someone experiences heart rhythm problems, certain antiarrhythmic medications may help, and sometimes even a pacemaker might even be necessary. In advanced cases, they could even implant a left ventricular assist device, which is a mechanical pump to assist the left ventricle with pumping the blood. And some people may even require a heart transplant in the final stages. But the overall goal is to stabilize the heart, ease the symptoms, and to avoid or slow the progression so that it doesn't lead to hospitalizations or come to these more intense interventions. So hopefully that gave you a nice overview of heart failure and that you learned something useful. Thanks for supporting our channel, and we'll see you in the next one.